Good morning, everybody. Let's take a deep breath. And relax. We're outside this morning, and we want to talk about the 5 reasons why labor should be optional. The first reason that labor should be optional is that people are happier when they are not forced to work. If you just think about slavery, no one is happy that they're being forced into working for someone else, and the fact that they're not getting paid, period, for their labor. So that's the first thing right off the bat. People obviously want to be happy. America was founded on partially on the concept of the pursuit of happiness, and let's just face it, people aren't happy when you force them to do something. The second reason that labor should not be forced, should be optional, is that labor, the people that work themselves are more productive. Okay? So we can look again at the example of slavery, and not only are people very, very unhappy whenever they are forced to work. In fact, the only difference between modern day wage labor and slavery back in the quote-unquote day, or quote-unquote back in the day, is that you get paid. I mean, there's like levels of it. You got slavery, indentured servitude, where you eventually gain your freedom, but then we have freedom and we get paid, but we're still being forced to work, and the majority of the money that most people make just goes in a wheel spinning around just so that they can survive. And so again, so like in the first category, slavery, people are completely forced, they're not free to make their own decisions, and they're not getting paid. Therefore, the labor that they do is going to be of a very low quality, because they're just scared of what's going to happen to them if they don't work. Another example is that you might not, that's not immediately obvious, is to think about the Spartans, the 300. Every Spartan that fought at the Battle of Thermopylae wanted to be there. You know, they were chosen. They all had children. Like, none of those warriors were bachelors. They all had families that they were defending. And on the other hand, the Persian army was much larger, but the quality of their soldiers, by and large, was lower. I mean, the Spartans were even better than the Immortals, but the general point is that whenever you force people to do something, their productivity level isn't as high as whenever they have the option or not to work. The third reason why labor should not be compulsory is that it eliminates unnecessary class envy. right? So you're still going to have class envy, but whenever people aren't compelled or obliged to have to work for somebody else, then there's a lessening of the animosity towards the employer, which in general, as you can see, produces a more cohesive work environment, etc. And yeah, I mean, again, like, we don't want to do away with class structure for the most part, you know. I mean, it seems to work, but again, this is about optimizing our labor force and getting the most out of the resources and the technology that we have available to us. And yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much that. The fourth reason why labor should be optional is that the majority of your earnings will be post expense. And the reason for that is that I'm basing this premise that work should be optional on a universal set of basic necessities, not money, not a UBI, not a monetary handout to people, but an offering of basic necessities, a set of basic necessities, including canned foods, water, power, and housing. And so, I mean, it's slightly debatable. Maybe not power. Maybe just land, canned food, and water is basically enough for people to survive. Now, so once you have a scenario in which people aren't forced to work in order to have basic survival necessities, and that's not including whatever you call it, like socialized medicine. Like I didn't even say that. Like I just said basic, like, necessities on the spot for a healthy person. And so yeah, in that case, maybe probably not all, but a greater portion, hopefully the majority, which is the idea, of your earnings will be completely free of your living expenses. How does that sound to you? Wouldn't you want to be able to spend or save your money, pretty much all the money that you make, instead of, oh, well, I got my paycheck and I just paid all the bills and bought groceries, and now I have like $10 to go buy a DVD or something, like, and do it again in another 2 weeks. That's not cool. Um, and so in the ability to free people up, or free up people's earnings, people will save more money. Everyone becomes richer and more prosperous, and you have more I don't know the exact word for it, but it's something like compulsory spending, or like desire spending. In other words, like, yeah, people, if you have more money post expense, then people are saving their money, and again, they have more money to buy the things that they want, and not necessarily the things that they need. And whenever people have more money to buy what they want, tell me how that is bad for the economy, okay? Because it's not. People will be able to buy their home, dream home, buy that boat much faster that they were trying to save up for. That's good for them. It's good for the companies that make boats. It's good for the people, for clothing manufacturers, etc. Because notice, you know, clothing is really, really good to have, but in most environments, you don't need clothes to survive. And so clothing, I mean, maybe blankets or something could be something that should be offered, like a blanket or two, but certainly not, you know, we're not going to clothe you your whole life. That's a bad idea. That's a overextension of what should be basically offered. And again, the idea of a set of universal basic necessities is to keep them small, so that they're not something that everyone, or pretty much virtually no one, is going to be satisfied with. The fifth and final reason that I have for you today why labor should not be forced is that it eliminates unnecessary jobs. Now, this is a compound reason, and I will explain why. If labor is optional, then the number of people who are willing to do jobs that are unnecessary reduces. So you basically end up drastically limiting the number of unnecessary jobs, while at the same time increasing the number of necessary, or at least high demand jobs, because employers are still going to want to maximize their profits. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is by expanding in the areas that people are willing to work in, etc. It will spur even more of a revolution in automation, and just the number of tech jobs will just explode, and people will be studying more because they will want these jobs. Again, there may be fewer jobs available on one hand, because if people by and large aren't obliged to have to work, then they're not going to want to take all these low-end, rat race, downward spiraling positions that just make other people rich and never really do anything for them. and they will be able to, you take the pressure off of them, of their basic necessities, and then you just allow them to, you free up their time so that they can educate themselves more and either become entrepreneurs or reach a level of qualification where they are able to take these positions that need to be filled. And of course, whenever people are studying more and learning more and trying to better themselves at their own pace, and because, as a matter of choice, they want to do better, then you can only increase the amount of creativity and innovation that people are going to have. Because, I'm sorry, there's like a lot of mosquitoes out here. It's kind of a bad idea to be outside this morning without bug repellent, but yeah, that's the basic idea. You're going to have fewer unnecessary jobs being filled. It's not that you'll eliminate all the quote unquote unnecessary jobs, but they're drastically limited, and so they have to be rebranded, in a way that's more attractive to potential employees. Just think about it. You don't have to necessarily work just on a basic necessity level. You can live in a tent on your little 1/16 of an acre piece of land and shoot squirrels and drink water out of the stream every day. That's not hurting anybody. It's not contributing to society at large, but just think of the number of people who aren't going to just settle for that. For such a basic level, and you let people, you let potential employees know that they are valuable by increasing the opportunity and the benefits essentially that are available to them for choosing such and such company to work for, as opposed to having an overabundance of workers and not enough jobs. Ideally, we want to have enough jobs for everybody that wants to work. And so if you just reduce the number of people that have to work, think about it this way, since it's harder to create a whole bunch of useful jobs that aren't just shovel ready, let's just put people to work like building a highway or something, that's a short-term solution. But if you create more, or if you reduce the number of people that have to work, then that indirectly balances out the number of jobs that are available with the number of people who are qualified and who want to assume those positions. Okay? So, and again, number 2 is a beautiful one. When you're not forced to work, but yet you choose to, the quality of your labor, the quality of your your efforts and your input are just magnified. Again, remember the 300. They chose, it was in a philosophical sense, it was like the choosers versus the free people who were, nobody's like completely free, but this was like a society that was vastly more free than one society, beating the heck out of a society who was much less free, more compelled to serve, and they were much larger in numbers, but history tells the tale of what happened. And so just think of that. Think of these 5 reasons. I'm going to write them below in the description, and I'm interested to see what people think, and if you can come up with some more reasons why labor should not be forced, please post them in the description below, and we can talk about them. If they're really good, I'll even make another video on the subject, and which actually plan to make a lot more video economical and not necessarily political videos, because while I do have strong political opinions, like, I'm not fundamentally tied to anything, and I'm actually very susceptible to persuasion, but so I'm really just wanting to focus on more of a economic, coming at society from a more economic standpoint. It's more inclusive and positive and uplifting, and hopefully which people will find sensible. And so that's all I have to say on the subject for today. Let's take a deep breath again. And have a wonderful day.